First of all, thank you for all of you for coming. We are here today to talk about heritage at home. One of the reasons we chose the three women we did here today was not just because they are super talented designers and businesswomen and have traveled the world, but your work really epitomizes, I think, what heritage at home means to a lot of us, which is not just embracing our own maybe personal heritages, but things we've found over the years on our travels or, from loved ones or whatever it is that have kind of moved into our hearts and our spaces. And how do you take all of that, and turn it into one kind of cohesive, beautiful home for clients? We're going to speak with Betsy Burnham, Angie Hranowski, and Katie Lead. We're going to jump right in. And I'm curious how, when you first meet a client and kind of delve into this conversation with them about what they love, what are they passionate about, how do you figure out where to start with them?
I think they're very forthcoming. If they have a really strong sense of heritage in their own family or ancestry, they tell us. They want to share that with us, especially if they want it to be part of their home.
When you're first meeting with a client, you're finding out what their narrative is, how they want to live, what their background is, what their history is, where they're from, the things that are important to them. Some people might come and have nothing, and then I have other clients that have quite a few inherited pieces, and we'll go through and I'll say, I think this would be great, or I'm not sure that that's really that worthy. And a lot of it is intuitive. I think you talk to them and I just sort of get a feeling based on what their likes and dislikes are and where they've traveled and what their history is and their family and what colors, how they want to live and what colors they gravitate to, and all of that sort of becomes part of the story.
Are you seeing people come to you with collections and pieces they love, or are you often starting from scratch for them?
For me, it's a real mixed bag. And also there's a fine line between I have to use my grandmother's, Victorian chair and oh, really? We've got to use 6 of your existing pieces, and that's like designer hell, right? When you don't have enough freedom. So listening and making what they have look better and reframing the art that we can't really stand to look at. And I think if there's not already an aesthetic there with a new client, it's almost harder because we could go so wrong. There's a whole playing field that you could really fumble around on.
It's always better to work with people who care. Always. I'm working on a job right now where the couple's moving back from Shanghai, so we're having to do a lot of this long distance, and I haven't seen a lot of their furniture. But he's from Connecticut, from a very waspy family, likes big chintz. She's Asian and likes sort of Scandinavian mid-century. But where were we? What were we talking about?
Well, now I'm curious how you kept that all going together, Scandinavian and the chintz and the,
So I did. So you're puzzling it together, right? So what you do is you have to learn how to be uncomfortable not knowing all the answers right away. And I just sort of completed the floor plan, the scheming, working in all their artwork and all this existing furniture, and then speccing on top of that all the things I think will bring it to the next level. And the husband just said, oh my God, I love this. I can't believe you've used all of these things. He said, it makes me curious about what you would have done had you started from scratch. And I just thought, I'm so glad not to have. Yeah. I so love that journey. I love getting to know people. I love the art of conversation. I like people's stories.
Yeah. I guess that's really what all of this is about, too, is their stories, the things they're passionate about, and their histories.
Yeah.
Do you think that heritage or culture means something different to people in each of those? I mean, I think about Charleston and it's steeped in history.
It's interesting, though, a lot of my clients actually come to me not because they want a house filled with a lot of antiques. They come to me for the opposite reason. There are definitely some who have inherited a lot, and they're like, we can't live like this. This is a way too, 200 years ago, in these beautiful old houses. And so I have had clients come to me and say, we need you to mix this up for us. And sometimes it's a lot of editing and figuring out what we're going to use, and hanging these 300-year-old portraits not over the fireplace but in other places, and all the things that you do to make it more modern and more about the way we live now. And a lot of those homes in Charleston you're talking homes from 1700, and they can be incredibly formal.
You don't have the square footage in New York. So here it's about indoor, outdoor living, casual lifestyle, natural carpets. Even the colors are about melding the inside and the outside. It's more vintage than antique. Whereas New York, it's like you can have 10 chairs exactly alike if they're antiques, but one of them was a mismatch. Only one of them, and it was wrong to begin with, right? 80 years ago. But because of that one weird intern leg, that one, instead of costing $6,000, is $80,000. And that's the one that's the most highly prized, because you don't have, like, a 4,000 square foot apartment can go for $20 million in New York City. You know, that's a normal house here. People invest in different ways there, and they like provenance there, where a piece of furniture's come from, who's lived with it. That is something that people get very, proud of. And
I love, too, that you just talked a little bit about that conversation between different time periods. And how do you know when it's kind of gone awry versus when it's really working?
I think if the client really loves something, then that's important. It's going to work, even if it's from two very different places and two very different time periods. It's going to work because they love it and they collected it. But also, there's other rooms. We come in and we look at everything with a fresh eye, so they're used to all these things, and we come up with an idea that they maybe didn't think of just by virtue of the fact that we just walked in.
You're thinking about that throughout the whole process. So when you're finding things, you do have an idea of what you think might work. And like you said, there's also other rooms. So if something doesn't work in one place, you feel like it works for the overall house, you can try it in another place. And a lot of it's about balance and balancing out the juxtaposition of those elements and just sort of intuitively knowing what you think is going to fit for that particular project as you find it.
I think there are lots of tricks to this. For me personally, I remember going to Vincent Wolf's apartment, and he's a great collector. And the way that he puts things in groups, like things aren't dispersed throughout. I think when it's gone too far, it's like it becomes dusty.
So you must love going into homes that, or maybe you don't love it, going into homes that you've designed years past. You must love to go back and kind of see how these homes have evolved too, right? Lived in them for a while.
Hopefully you photographed it before it's evolved too much. They're wonderful to live in after that, but I'm amazed sometimes. I go back to places and they've moved furniture around. It's like, I never would have thought of that, but it's so much better. Yeah. And it's just so much better. It makes so much more sense. So it's a conversation.
I have one just recently who I love. I was just texting with her, and every time she's like, okay, maybe you send me pictures so I know exactly. It is like, and they live in it. And then I have another client, and I go over there, and it is like a shit show. There's like 5, like she had, look at our little kittens that we've adopted. They're living in the shower.
Oh,
and then they have like 3 dogs, and they have like 3 kids.
Living in the shower.
And shortly after we were kind of nearing completion, and I was over there, and I called my friend who's my photographer, and I said, we have got to get over there like ASAP, because
I'm kind of curious if all of you have, design icons or people you admire that you think really do it right.
I've got kind of an obvious, corny one, and that's Ralph Lauren. Because I'm into Americana, and I don't think anyone from the very start of when I even opened my eyes to design, when I was younger, does it better. Yeah. I admire him and his empire.
And I think David Hicks comes to mind first in terms of being one who really mixes all of these sort of, disparate cultures and styles. And he certainly was the, master at that.
Okay, right now, I'm really fascinated by the French. I love Jacques Grange. And also, I'm really a huge admirer of Oliver Firth. Talking about young talent coming up. Really young talent. It's hard to believe he's so young. It's extraordinary what he and Sean are up to. And I just applaud that.
I think I might open it up to the audience for any questions.
I'm wondering, what do you do when you can't travel and you're living in that uncomfortable place you spoke about earlier, or you're just blocked?
I think starting from scratch, like empty table. When I finally just tossed out all the old ideas and started from scratch and asked other people, I think collaboration is, we can't design in a vacuum, and
I think that we have to find ways to inspire ourselves all the time. I think you have to make a commitment to that. I really do. I think that, I think magazines help. I think Pinterest helps. I think, I'm a huge fan of Instagram. My God, who else is obsessed with Instagram? Like, obsessed? Like, I'm like, save, screenshot. Like, like,
I honestly, I don't spend a ton of time on there, and when I do, I sort of end up in a rabbit hole. But I find for me that sometimes it almost just becomes too overwhelming. There's so much stuff out there that it just sort of like, my brain gets all like crisscrossed. So for me, when I'm trying to get inspired, sometimes things come more fluidly than others. And if not, I'd love to look at books. I look at old books. I look at new books.
How do you advise your clients between antiques or quality reproductions?
Mine is usually budgetary. Even when a client has a large budget, they have a budget. So I'm a big mixer of really important things and, more common things. But I don't know, if something's trying too hard and it's a reproduction, it's just like, ugh, I can't.
I think a lot of it is budget. You try to go for the real thing, I think, when you can.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm sure the ladies will stay up here if you have any questions for them.